Hello and welcome to the 9th video, where we will learn all about HTML forms. Everyone has seen a form. Everyone has used one. In fact, in this video, I will teach you how to create your own login form. So what are forms? A form, in simple words, are a set of information fields to be collected and acted upon. Most areas where you can input information into a web page are created using HTML forms, like entering a text, numbers into a text box, ticking a checkbox, choosing a radio button, or selecting an option from a list. The form then usually submit to the website and the data is used in some way. For example, in Facebook's form can be found everywhere. Let's see that. So as we mentioned before, a form is a group of inputs that we can fill information in. So in Facebook, we have a login section where we can fill our email and password, and then we also have to create an account section where we have multiple fields. If you right-click, inspect element, click on this arrow, and go and hover over this section, the login section, you'll find that it's a form. And as you see here, it has the HTML form tag. The same goes with the create an account section. If you hover over the create an account section, and let's try to find it. Nope, not this one. Yeah, that's kind of difficult. Yeah, there we go. And as you see, the create an account is actually a form. And not just Facebook, even Google uses forms. If we go to Google, and you see we have a text box over here that we can type in a keyword and then click on search and we can find the results. You right click, inspect element, click on the arrow, navigate to the text box, and you're going to find your form. There you go. So now that we understand what is a form, let's try to create one. So now, make sure to have your code editor open, and beside it we have our web browser. And inside our code editor, inside the body tags, we're going to create our form. We open and close a form tag where we will wrap our content inside of it. The form tag can have a few attributes which we will cover later in my coming series for PHP web development. So make sure to subscribe if you're interested in creating a dynamic web page. The link for this series, you're going to find it down in the description once I upload it. Also, an important note, you cannot nest or have a form inside of another form. Now that we created our form, we can go ahead and start asking for the information we need. For login, this is email and password. These are represented by an input tag with a type attribute. There are different types of input elements. I won't be covering them all in this video. However, I believe that you now understand how attribute works, and I have a reference link from W3 School down in the description where you can see and test all types of inputs. Now let's go ahead and create our input. The first one is we're going to ask for the email. So we create an input. An input tag is a self-closing tag. That means we do not need to open it and close it. And we are going to use the type attribute. And since we are asking for our email, so the type is going to be email. Control S. If you go back and refresh, you're going to see a text box. And when you type in it, we can see our text. Now let's proceed with the password. We create another input. We close it. And we say the type is password. Control S. Refresh, and now let's test it. If you write in password, as you see, the text is replaced by dots. And this is a very important point that I need to highlight. Each type will behave differently inside the web browser. Text and email may look the same. However, according to the browser, they're completely different. And they're very important when you're trying to validate or check whether this is an email or a text. The same goes for password. Password will help us to cover the text that we're typing in. So now that we created the inputs for the information we need, let's add some style to make it look like a login form. So I'm going to use an H3 tag, H3, and let's say login. And then I'm going to break it between the two. Let me close it. And over here, I'm going to say this is for email. And this is for password. Control S. Refresh the page, and as you see, now we understand what each and every element represents, or each and every input is for. However, if you look at it, you definitely will notice that we are missing one thing, a button, a login button. So how do we create a login button? A login button or a submit button is also a type of input. So we copy our input tag, we paste it, and we change the type into submit. Control S, refresh, and there you go. We have our button. And to add it to the next line, let's just break it. Control S, refresh, and there we go. we have our login form. Now that I created my submit button, I would like to have it saying login instead of submit. So how do we do this? We can do this using an attribute called value. So we can go back, value is equal to login, Control S, refresh, and there you go. Now our form looks like a login form. So let's try to test our form. And the first thing I want you to notice is try to type any type of text inside your email and then any type of password and click login. And as you see, it have given us a warning. And this is why the input type is very important, as it will help us in validation. So let's change this gibberish into a proper email. So example@gmail.com and test our login form. It's going to work. Now that we have created our inputs, there are a couple of important attributes that I need to mention. And the first one is name. The name attribute is a very important attribute, especially when you're trying to submit a form. To understand why, we are going to create a register form. Now in the register form, I will have two text inputs. The first one is going to ask for the first name. The second one is going to ask for the last name. Then I'm going to have an email input, a password input, and of course you can request for more information depending on your scenario. Let's go ahead and try to create that. Back to your code editor, replace login with register. And as I mentioned, we're going to have two text inputs. The first one is going to ask for first name. Okay, let's create an input. And the type is going to be text. Is equal to text. We're going to copy this. We're going to change it to last name. Control S, refresh. Oh, and before you refresh and change login to register, or let's change it to create an account. Create account. Control S, refresh. Oh, I forgot a breaking tag. Let's create a breaking tag. Control S, refresh. Oh, I forgot a breaking tag. So let's try to add the breaking tag. Over here, BR, close it. Same thing goes over here. BR. Refresh, and there you go. So as you see in our example, we have two inputs with the same type asking for different information. The name attribute helps us in differentiating between these two inputs when we send the information to our server. So let's go ahead and add the name attribute. So inside our text input, the first one, I'm going to add name is equal to first underscore name. And a very important note to always keep in your mind. A name attribute should never, ever have any spaces or special characters inside of it. The same thing goes, let's copy this name tag. Let's copy this name attribute. Paste it inside of last name and change first to last. Control S, refresh. Our form has not changed. But if you try to inspect the element and go for the first one, you'll see the name attribute is over here. So the name attribute is like an identifier that will be used by our servers to identify each and every input and its value. Now that we have covered name, I will move to the second attribute, which is placeholder. And this attribute is only available for inputs that we can type in, like emails and texts. Now let's try to create it. Go back to your first text input, and we're going to write placeholder. Then equal to first name. Control S, refresh your page, and as you see, we have a first name over here, but when we click on it and we type, it disappears. So what is a placeholder attribute? It's an attribute that can be used for an instruction or a label for what information are we asking for. Now let's try to use placeholder in all of our inputs and remove the ugly text that we have created over here. Copy the placeholder, remove last name, remove email, remove password, the placeholder, and for password, Control S, refresh the page, and as you see, now each and every input is asking for specific information or instructing the user what type of information should be typed in. In fact, as I mentioned before, it can be a set of instruction or a label. Right now we have it in email as a label. We can change that into an instruction as follows. We can use example@example.com, Control S. And as you see here, now we have an instruction, what an email should look like. And for password, we can have it as another instruction, 1 to 6 chars or characters. If we refresh, now we'll have the instruction inside our text box. Now that we have learned all about forms, I want you to go ahead and try to build your own registration form, a student registration form. You can do this with the help of the reference added below in the description. The form should include first name, last name, date of birth, email, phone, and country or nationality. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we will cover the rest of input types, including options, checkbox, images, and so.